Welcome to Season 4 of the Printed Circuit Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Chavez. It's hard to believe we started this podcast in 2022 with a short series of supply chain resilience, and it's grown to encompass over 30 episodes that touch on topics ranging from PDN optimization, PCB routing, to EMI and EMC in-circuit board design. This season, we'll continue the great conversations and address more trends, challenges, and opportunities across the printed circuit engineering industry. Today, let's talk about the changing dynamics of the printed circuit engineering workforce, which is ultimately driving the need for more intuitive software user experience. Joining me today is our chief architect, Jerry Suter, to discuss how Siemens is addressing this need and why. Jerry, welcome to the show, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Can you give your audience a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. Again, my name's Jerry Suter. I have been in this industry working for various EDA companies that have been acquired for about 34 years now. Worked my way up from quality assurance into being a senior director in product strategy, responsible for all of the PCB design tools on the desktop. So your schematic entry, your layout, your constraints, library content generation. That's primarily my responsibility.
That's awesome. So basically, it's the magic behind the scenes, huh?
A lot of that happens, yes.
Awesome. You know, we've been talking a lot about how the workforce is changing. You know, many designers are retiring and there aren't enough engineers entering the field. You know, in the past, engineers were often seen as specialists, you know, just like designers are the same way, you know, where each individual or a team had a specific area of expertise. But that's different today. Engineers are now being forced to take on additional tasks and expanding their skill set. What are you hearing from the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in the industry for quite a while. I've seen what's happened over time where you had your typical layout expert who, you know, was a tool jockey, knew the tool inside and out, understood the layout process, the go-to guy understanding from manufacturing needs to assembly needs. Those guys are retiring and they're being replaced by engineers who are quite different in their demographic. They're more infrequent users of our tools. They need to be able to get up to speed faster with those tools. They need guidance in that design process as well as the constraints they need to maintain. They're not just built into their historical memory. They need the tool to help them design those printed circuit boards, and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, you know, I've experienced that firsthand, especially these last 10 years. And as I've seen the industry change, I mean, you attend any conference and you can see that generational gap. And, you know, with projects being restricted with schedules, tighter budgets, engineers are just being forced to do more and having to take on more, cross-pollinate into different domains. So I can really see that being, you know, how that's unfolding. Can you tell me, how does the changing workforce dynamic impact the way we develop PCB design and simulation software?
Yeah, I mean, we started seeing the change in demographic in certain markets in the 2011, 2013. And then by 2017, 18, it was very clear there was going to be a big change, even in the, what we call the enterprise markets, where those experienced layout designers who had all that knowledge of how to get printed circuit boards designed were retiring. And we see that they're being replaced by primarily new college grads that are using the PCB design world as their kind of introduction into commercial EDA. And they're a much different resource than a classic, power user. They have different expectations. They're a different demographic. They're younger. Their expectations on a software tool to be easy to use is a great need where, your classic users, they've learned it. They're power users. They know all the secrets. And, the ease of use thing wasn't a concern, but now it absolutely is.
Yeah, I agree. Getting someone, up and running as quickly as possible, especially whether you're a veteran and you're cross-pollinate from one tool to another, or if you're new to the industry, getting up to speed as fast as you can is key, especially when you think about the dynamics in engineering teams, when you talk about limited resources and having to do more with less.
The expectations on the company is those guys are coming into the workforce and they need to be productive as fast as possible. Those schedules need to be fulfilled. And you
Oh yeah.
can't have someone come into a company and then say, hey, they're going to spend a year to become a tool expert. They need to be productive very, very quickly.
Yeah, and many times they don't really have, or in some cases, they don't have a mentor to help guide them. So they need to be, they need to get their hands on software that's intuitive, that allows them to be able to get up to speed faster, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
You know,
exactly it.
that ties me into my next question is, what does user experience really mean?
Well, user experience, it means a lot. How do I get to a function or feature quickly? How do I recognize that function or feature within a hierarchy of possible hundreds of different capabilities within that tool? Is it modern? And some of that user experience is, I want to control the color of it. Do I want to have a light mode or a dark mode? We're seeing a lot of users over the last few years, kind of like the dark modes for their user environments, whether it's on their phone in Office. So those are
Mhm.
the type of things that make up the entire user experience. And for us to aid that, we decided to invest in some AI technology to aid those users in using those complex products of hundreds of commands to know, give them the right feature at the right time based on their design process.
Yeah, I can tell you, having a good feel for the cockpit that you're in. When I think about, when I'm attacking an expedition, I'm attacking my design, having that cockpit that has that personal feel to it, just gives me a better opportunity to be more innovative, especially with the AI command predictive support that I have now in the new GUI. It's amazing how it can really make a difference in our evolution.
Yeah, and the
Can you
other thing
tell?
is customization is a big thing as well. You can't have a tool that's kind of fixed. I need to tailor the solution that I'm using to my needs. So to
Hmm.
be able to easily customize it, and people are expecting, like you see on your phone, you hold down an icon, it wiggles, you move it around. It's really easy, it's intuitive, and that customized user experience will make the user more productive than having to fit their process to the software's base definition.
I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. So tell me, here at Siemens, how do we come to the point where we wanted to make an investment in a more intuitive user experience?
Yeah, well, we looked at the data with that was showing that the PCB user was retiring, that demographic was leaving the workforce, and we see that there's a lot of engineers entering the workforce. So we started seeing that trend, like I said, for certain markets in early 2011, 13, but in 17, 18, it was a general trend. So we knew we had to make an investment to build a solution that met the needs of those future users of our products. And it goes across products besides layout. Simulations is the same solution. I jump in, I do a simulation, I come back 6 months later. I don't want to have to spend weeks to learn the tool. I want to go accomplish what I need to do as quick as possible. And that new user experience really facilitates and enables those users to be as productive as possible, as quick as possible.
Yeah, I think that's key, especially, we think about, how many times an engineer may touch a tool throughout, a year, depending on the project he's on. It could be 6 months to a year before he touches the tool again. And having to save the time of, a few weeks of getting oriented or trying to fight with the tool to figure out how to do certain things. This new UX that we released is totally amazing in my opinion, and I love it. It's a game changer in my opinion, and it truly embraces the engineer and the designer to be so much more effective in their task at hand.
I agree.
Tell
And the
me,
data
yeah,
shows exactly that. Well, we went through a process of 5 beta programs to get users hands on with the solution, take their input, fine tune the solution to meet more of their needs. And the feedback has been spectacular across really all the demographics, whether you're a simulation user of hyperlinks technology, whether you're a hardware engineer using Designer or constraints, and then, of course, your layout users. That was one of the primary areas we're focused on, but the solution we offer really impacts all of the different roles within an EDX design profile.
yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. So a next question that comes to mind is, what did we specifically hope to achieve with a more intuitive software user experience?
The primary thing was focused on the new users coming into the market that become productive as fast as possible. When we talk to our customers, especially executives, they're telling us, hey, we're hiring a lot of new users into the workforce to work on electronics design, and they need to be productive. We can't wait for them to learn your tool. And that's, new users. Infrequent users is a similar situation. As those users who are tool jockeys are retiring, the frequent users are becoming more, and they just can't spend days or weeks learning the tool after they come back to it after a year. So those really the primary use cases where we're focused on, and then what technology would facilitate them being able to use those tools as fast as possible and becoming productive as fast as possible.
Yeah, well, I would tell you, we've definitely hit a home run with this. From my perspective, to be able to get up to speed so much more faster and be more innovative in the way we attack the designs, and that's the key. I mean, the way that the software is it's just intuitive, the way it just unfolds, and as you are going from task to task, it's amazing how it helps you be just that much better, and it really opens up for the potential for, like I said, in being more innovative, but more opportunities to be more creative in your approach in the design.
I agree, and that's a good point. You instead of learning the tool, you're optimizing your electronics design. You're being more creative. You're thinking about what you're doing and want to achieve instead of how to do that, and that's really important in our industry.
Yep, I agree. How did we ensure that we obtained real user feedback on the changes we were rolling out in our latest software release?
So, like I said, we had 5 beta programs, and we engaged with our existing customers in various demographics from new users. We went to some customers saying, hey, do you have any people that you've hired recently? We'd like to work with them on this beta program. We've had a lot of customers participate in that. Another thing that was interesting to us is we had a university program where we got some young engineers about to graduate from a university program, and we had them evaluate our software as a new user. And we use that to actually do what we call A/B testing, to compare the solution that they have in the previous user experience and the new solution, and determine, are we really getting improvements in productivity? And we saw some cases where in the schematic side, we were seeing almost 30% improvement in productivity with the new user experience for a user to get up to speed and become productive and build their first hardware design. That's pretty significant.
I agree. I can tell you how many times, working on an engineering team that, I could have, or an engineering department where I could have maybe 50 engineers, and half of them are fairly new to the tool, or maybe have a year or two under their belt, having to save time and reteach, or to take the time reteach. You talk about opportunity cost, whereas if with like the new software, the new release we have being more intuitive and easier, and the feel of it is just more personalized, it allows them to be up to speed a lot faster than in previous years. And it's definitely a huge difference. And I can't wait to see the evolution of the next generation of engineers, and the quality of products, and in the speed in which they do it. It's truly amazing.
No, totally agree. And I think, our investment in user experience is not what we call one and done. We are making additional investments. We got great input and built a roadmap that will continue to invest and deliver additional capabilities in all our products for user experience that will continue to move the bar as customers are adopting these newer releases.
Speaking of customers, can you share some feedback, some of the feedback people had on the new software user experience, and how did it change or alter what we ultimately released?
Yeah, I mean, we would get feedback from users about specific use cases, and those feedback can come from new users, infrequent users, or power users. And we got some feedback from power users is, I need a deeper level of customization. I'm a power user because I can tailor the software to my needs, and we want all users to be power users. So some of the feedback was, I need a better level or a better granularity to customize the product. And, we made investments in our user experience that we just released in having a very great customization capability, ability to take commands that are infrequently used and push them aside so they're not my way, and take commands that I use every day and bring them up to the front so that I can access them very quickly. And that's probably one of the big things we got from a feedback, was really around customization to make users more productive.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I think it's about all the time we have today with our podcast, but I want to, any last word you'd like to share? Any last comments before I close this out?
Yeah, I mean, the user experience, I think, has become important in engineering tools like we have at Siemens. I think it's a change to build more commercial tools and specialized tools, because the expectations of the new workforce are these products are recognizable, easy use, consistent. And I think it's really exciting as new users enter the workforce and get to experience our solution, that they feel comfortable with it and not surprised that this is, a product from the 90s.
I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you, Jerry, for sharing your insights on the changing dynamics of the printed circuit engineering workforce. To our audience, continue to tune in for more trends, challenges, and opportunities across the printed circuit engineering industry.